We want to continue our coverage of the impeachment trial of Attorney General Ken Paxton. He has conducted several interviews since his acquittal, we know. Our media partners at Texas Monthly have also been following the story and those interviews. So let's bring in for conversation Ben Rowen, senior editor for News and Politics over at Texas Monthly. So I'm curious, first question for you, what have you and Texas Monthly discovered about the Senate deliberations? Because we all want to know what it was like behind closed doors, how it all went down last week. What have you found out?
So there are two main questions we had hovering over the verdict. The first was whether senators' publicly recorded votes matched their internal deliberations. And the second was what role, if any, Lieutenant Governor Dan Patrick had in steering the verdict. And on that first question, what we found, and a quick refresher, House impeachment managers needed 21 votes to convict Paxton on any charge. They had 12 Democrat votes, 2 Republican votes on many of the charges. So they needed 7 more Republicans. And what we found is that there were maybe 3 Republicans who privately were willing to vote for conviction if they were the 21st vote, which is to say they were willing to vote for conviction if Paxton was going to be convicted, but they didn't want to stick their necks on the line in the case that the rest of the body wasn't going to vote to convict him on the charges. On the second matter, what we're hearing is that Dan Patrick, who is well known to have a very firm control of the Senate, left the chamber early on Friday afternoon as deliberations started. And if you talk to insiders about the Texas Senate, they'll tell you that there's really only one senator, Dan Patrick, because what he wants passes and he brooks no dissent. So one source told us that the fact that he left early indicated to them that the verdict might have already been baked in, or at least that Dan Patrick was feeling very confident about the verdict before deliberations really got deeply, deeply underway.
Right. Very, very interesting insight, especially considering that we all know that everybody has a political future in that realm, right? And to see what it looked like behind closed doors. So what's your take also from listening to the recent interviews from Ken Paxton? He's been given a few of them on basically life after the impeachment trial, which amounts to about a week now.
So I heard him on Tucker Carlson last night. I know he also went on about 5 podcasts this morning, which I haven't heard. But my main takeaway is that what makes Paxton such a successful politician, at least electorally, is that he's able to turn his alleged misdeeds into virtues. On Tucker Carlson last night, what I mean by that is he framed everything that had happened as an attack on him in particular because he is so successful at suing the Biden administration. Now, his record is a little bit different than that, and he made clear that he thought Biden was behind this impeachment, which, given the whistleblowers who came forward a couple years ago, were from his own office, doesn't really seem to track. And he also made clear that he thinks that the Texas House is controlled by Democrats, which I think anyone following the past few years of the Texas legislature would know is not the case. As far as life after impeachment, I think he is ready to make hell for those who voted against him.
Both the leaders of the Texas Senate and the House have given some pretty scathing remarks since the verdict about the impeachment process. Can both sides work together, in your estimation, down the road to see an even more divisive legislative branch kind of heading into the next special session and beyond? It does beg the question, can they get along in some way to further what we need to do for the state's business?
You know, before Dan Patrick's speech on Saturday after the impeachment trial, I would have said that tensions were already very high. If you recall, back in April, Dan Patrick called House Speaker Dade Phelan a Californian, which is pretty much the highest charge you can levy against someone in Texas. And the bodies could not agree on much of anything, particularly on school vouchers, which is the issue that they are coming back to Austin for in a couple of weeks. I think that the two chambers have historically had tensions between themselves, and those are only figured to be ever more inflamed by Dan Patrick's statement after the trial accusing the House of running an improper impeachment and Dade Phelan's response. I note that all of the House members who oppose vouchers who are Republicans also voted against Ken Paxton. So I'm not sure how much Dan Patrick's appeal that the impeachment process was shambolic will help them move towards a vote for school vouchers.
All right. We appreciate the insight as always. Ben Rowen, senior editor, News and Politics, Texas Monthly. Ben, thank you.
Thank you for having me.